Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy New start to this Saturday morning over here. It's a Saturday Ethereum day, as we'll be keeping it, because, well, usually there's not too much to update on Bitcoin on Saturdays, although there will be a big update tomorrow for the long term on the macro for Sunday for Bitcoin. But today, good day to reserve for Ethereum, looking at Ethereum USD and then Ethereum Bitcoin pairing as well. We'll peek on into that and just see where the major pivots are and kind of what's most likely to happen in this next few week span, let's say, as the focus will be on higher term timeframes for Ethereum. But other than that, before we get into it, I want to once again give the spotlight, as I get fucking tongue-tied over myself, to the Bybit promotion going on. They got 0% on maker fees for derivative contract orders. Plus, you can get the Jewelite for free for the first 30 days if you follow the directions in the link in the description below. And then because Bybit and basically every other exchange is going KYC and everyone's concerned that they'll actually have to do that, well, they do have a decentralized exchange arm called Apex, which I have an affiliate link to in the description below as well, which will actually award you 5% off of your lifetime fees, plus a few things likely in the future as well that we're kind of negotiating on, because you know that I like my discounts. Anyways, yeah, let's just jump right into it right now. Starting off right over here with the weekly time frame for Ethereum, and you can see that it's been playing with the Gaussian channel on the weekly quite well. In fact, very, very similar to Bitcoin, although different positioning overall, but ultimately the same sort of interpretation applies here in the sense that Ethereum broke above the mean band back on April 10th for the first time in basically a year. I mean, the last time that it was above it, yeah, was literally April 18th of 2022. Anyways, in this case, same sort of interpretation of as Bitcoin, in the sense that as long as Ethereum is above that mean band, it is more likely to play between the top side of the Gaussian channel and the mean band, and it would indicate long-term, or long-term relative to the weekly, that it's more likely to be bullish than bearish. This obviously comes with the caveat, as always, that invalidation and mega invalidation would be below the mean band on a closing basis, which is like low 1800s. If that does happen, very likely, very, very likely there's going to be a tremendous, massive move down, somewhere around the bottom end of the Gaussian channel, which is currently at... Where is it currently at? Like mid 1300s, with bounces along the way, of course, as well. But until that happens, again, upside more likely here. And obviously, the top side of the Gaussian channel would be indicative of the next major rally emerging and breaking out of this long-term range that essentially Ethereum's been in, going back to the breakdown from May of last year. And what do you know? About a year away, it looks like Ethereum is retesting the top side of it. And, that could be a potential setup for a major, massive breakout in Ethereum's case. Now, what's also on the topic of conversation as far as major massive moves would be the weekly volatility represented by the BBWP indicator right here. We are at extreme lows, and this is really only comparable. Yeah, in the full history of Ethereum on the weekly specifically, this signature over here is really only comparable to what we saw back in 2021, actually, the end of 2021. Now, obviously, that was precipitating a major downside move, as volatility is direction neutral. It doesn't give us a bias on direction. It gives us a bias on the severity of a move. But in this case over here, then we can check in on our momentum also doesn't see what's, where the sort of pivots are and maybe what's more likely depending upon those. But for right now, that would be a tremendous consideration that, we're likely going to be looking at a big move, maybe a little bit later this month. Yeah, it could very well be later this month, basically between now and like early June. Anyways, going into the 2-day time frame, speaking of momentum oscillators, Ethereum does have hidden bullish evidence on the 2-day RSI, and the 2-day Joule in this case is also turning white, which is actually closing tonight. And if the next tick does turn cyan, that would be a damn good signal. You're probably going to see a retest of the highs, as it already is supported by DMI in this case. And retest of the highs would be, like low 2100s. At that point, obviously, the weekly Gaussian channel is going to come into the mix, and well, if those things kind of happen simultaneously, then you'll have a simultaneous breakout, which again would be indicative of that next major move. Going back into it over here, I do want to go over some schoolboy fucking patterns because apparently people really, really like this, which is funny enough. You really don't see me do it too often, but in this case, why not for Ethereum? And what has Ethereum been kind of doing for the last year or so? It's been kind of wedging itself into this pattern over here, putting in those weekly higher lows over a long period of time. You might even call this an ascending triangle, which is one of the few patterns that I think like actually kind of works, to be honest with you. But the interesting thing about this is it does have a validation and then implied move point, which would be validation above basically, basically the current high on a weekly closing basis. And at that point, there actually would be an implied move. I personally speaking, I don't think that this is reasonable. But the implied move would actually be up in like 3,500. What I do think would be a lot more reasonable, however, would be this area right here, right around the 618 at about 2,700. If Ethereum were to break out, very likely a big move somewhere right around here. It looks like a nice little clock and balls. So that is also very visually appealing. And let me just complete the picture. There we go. But more importantly, I'd be mindful of this area right here at about 2,700 as if there is going to be major rejection, that's very likely where it does come from with another pullback, probably somewhere around like 25, 35, somewhere around there as well. Anyways, moving on now, I do want to get into stochastic momentum and see where the pivots are for that. Starting off over here on the 2-day time frame, similar to the Jewel Light, I think that this can provide a little bit of guidance with us as they should. A lot of the time they will have some carryover here, and a couple things stick out. First and foremost, we do see a nice trend line governing the lows since actually June of 2022, connected with the lows in September, connected with the lows in November, and then presumably potentially the lows over, or the move over here as well. Now it will actually officially turn to the upside tonight if Ethereum does close above 1892, which is currently almost it's almost $100 above as of right now. Or I guess it's like $80 above, but anyways, that would be another sort of compelling thing for the short term of a retest of those of those prior highs. And of course, if that follows through, then we'd also have the breakout on the higher term timeframes like the weekly, likely be getting a lot more continuation. Daily time frame is going to be showing upside momentum as long as Ethereum is above 1830. The 12-hour time frame is going to be showing upside momentum as long as Ethereum is above 1940, actually getting a little bit closer to current price action. 6-hour time frame starting to look a little bit more short-term toppy, to be fair. Don't really know if I want to go over these lower-term time frames because it's not really the focus of this video, but 1955 would be the magical number right there. 4-hour time frame, same thing, looking a little bit short-term toppy at 1990, and hourly, same thing as well, nose diving below 2015. So if I had to call it right now on the short-term timeframes, I do think that it comes back down in the short term, somewhere like to low 1900 or so. But again, I didn't really want to focus that for today's video. We should also go check in on the herp levels over here. I think that they also accurately summarize basically just the current ranges. The average historical returns range is currently at about 2030, meaning that if Ethereum can actually close above there, which would obviously be a lot lower than even the 2-day pivot, very likely we do see a move to the top side of the range, somewhere around 2200. Obviously that would put Ethereum on new highs on this rally, and again putting it into a potential position to actually break above that Gaussian channel and initiate the next major run, at least in the way they look at things. Until that happens though, sideways still does favor the Boo laws, as long as, very important, as long as it's above the bottom side of the range, which is 1720. Below 1720 is where you're going to start to see me get a lot more bearish. I think that was also somewhere in alignment with the Gaussian channel, or was it 1820 actually, so a little bit lower. I would say 1820 would be good enough, but obviously that one's going to move a little bit, seeing as it does update each and every week. But yeah, going back into it over here, that would be the sort of the next major area in the short term for the Boo laws to break. And then of course the weekly, want to see that one follow through. And then at that point, probably looking at a move somewhere to 2700. If things get really crazy, which I do not endorse this target, but it would be 3,500, I guess. Personally speaking, I think 2,700 would be a lot more reasonable. And then we come back to it after that and reassess. Anyways, other than that, I wanted to just very briefly go over Ethereum Bitcoin pairing here. Now, overall, on the long term, I'm actually very, very bearish on this. But in the short term, or the relative short term, we do see that 2-day regular bullish evidence is starting to emerge from this last little low right here. So does it get another shot back up towards 7 million plus Satoshis? Perhaps yes, but long term still, I don't really see any real reason to change my long-term view on this one. We start to reference like the quarterly, the monthly, the bi-monthly, like these things, look a lot like they're putting in a top right here. Wouldn't be surprised to see these things come down like significantly in the next year or two. But that's very, 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 very long term. But in the short term, yeah, it probably has one more rally here, at least I do think. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. Nice and short and sweet as we want it to be. And with that said, I want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.